Do you have 1 hour to burn, or do you just want to sit down and learn a lot about chickens? Well, in this video, I'm going to be literally teaching you literally everything I know about chickens. And we're going to go fully in depth about just about everything. This is going to be a ton of video essays, and not just a compilation of video essays. These are video essays I am making. It's like a dropping of an album, kind of. So, this is going to be a long video essay. I'm currently recording this audio clip in, I'm not joking, like January, so that's cool. Let's begin. So what are some good chicken breeds to start off with? Well, there is a ton, and I mean a ton of chicken breeds, so in this segment, we're going to get right into that. The Buff Orpington is one of my personal favorite chicken breeds, and can be usually found for, I'd say, around $3 to $6, depending on which type of chicken you're going to get, what the breeder is, and all that sort of different stuff there. Personally, from my experience, they lay, I'd say, around 200 to 250 eggs per year, and they also end up giving you a great experience. They're really friendly, they know what they're doing, and the best part about them is that they're also dual purpose, so you could either use them for eggs or meat, although personally, I wouldn't really use a 3 to 6 pound chicken as meat. These are the black and white striped chickens that lay you these like brown eggs, the ones that are more similar to the ones you'll find at the store. They usually weigh, I'd say, about the same as Buff Orpingtons, like usually 4 to 6 pounds. They lay around, I'd say, 240 to 310 eggs per year, which is a lot, but once they get older, that number decreases sharply. Although they lay through the winter a lot of the time, so they're a really useful breed of chicken to have around, especially if you live in an environment like me, where just the other day, we got like 2 inches of snow, then we got some more snow recently, and it's been freezing up stuff, and maybe we might get some more snow next week. They're saying 1 to 3 on Tuesday, you never know. Now, if you want some variety in your chicken flock, I would definitely recommend getting an Easter egger. They lay blue eggs, or green eggs, or even pink eggs. They lay a big variety, and it all really depends on which breeds they're mixed with. Easter eggers aren't technically a chicken breed. They're just a way cheaper version of the Americana with similar features, but they're all mixed with different breeds, so you don't really know what you're going to get. It's basically a wild card. You have no clue what you're going to end up getting. You're flipping the dice, and you're going to see what ends up happening. There's 1 out of 10 chance you get this, there's 1 out of 10 you get that, so there's no known way to actually define which color eggs you'll end up getting, but on average, I say they lay around 200 to 245 eggs a year. So they're really good for variety, they're really friendly, but they also are kind of sucked up to the rooster as well, so that kind of sucks. Well, guys, it looks like we're going to have a snow day tomorrow, so I'm going to be able to record many of these things over the course of the next 2 days. We are supposed to get 10 to 16 inches of snow tomorrow. I'm super excited, yo. Anyways, we're going to be talking about the essentials for raising baby chickens. Let's get into... Alright, so there's a ton of things you're going to need for baby chickens, and a lot of these are going to be listed right now. So first of all, the first thing you're going to need is, of course, some feed. But what feed in particular? Well, you want to find one that specifically says chick feeder on it, because you can't just give them the layer pellets. You want to wait till at least 16 weeks old to give them those. You also need a feeder to put the feed into, because, well, I think it's pretty obvious why you're going to need that. You're also going to need a waterer, where you can put the water in, preferably a smaller one. That smaller one is going to be able to hold more, so that way the chickens don't play in it. But once they get to, I'd say, around like the 4-week mark, then you might want to get a bigger waterer that you could use for the remainder of their lives. I'd also recommend getting a small brick, to put in there, so that way you could put the waterer on top of it. So that way the chickens have, so that way the chickens can reach it a bit better and know how to like bend down and all that whatnot to go get the water. It's really convenient for them. It's really useful for baby chickens. But you can also get a bigger brick once they get a little bit older, so you could like clean the brick out and whatnot. You're also going to need some shavings. Well, shavings are pretty obvious. I think we all know what shavings are for. They're for catching the waste material in there. And then you want to clean out the shavings, I'd say, once every 1 to 2 weeks. We'll get into care in the next clip though. So next we got some things that you don't really need necessarily, but it would be really useful to have them there, obviously. So some of these things include treats. They really love those treats, so I'd recommend giving it to them, I'd say, around like 3 to 6 times a week. Give it to them on like special days and all that sort of stuff. Another thing that they're also going to not necessarily need, but is kind of convenient to have it, is going to be straw. This will actually help them in case they begin getting into spilling water and stuff like that. And oh, by the way, for the last clip, I forgot to mention heat lamps somehow. That wasn't written down in my notes. There's a few things I might forget every now and then. You guys can point that out in the comments below. This is not a perfect video. I know it's an hour long, but you know how it goes around these areas. Well, looking at the last clip makes me laugh really good, because now they lowered the totals to like 4 to 7 inches, which sucks, but it's alright, because that means less snow that I have to shovel, but I'm still disappointed about that. But today we're going to be talking about just baby chicken care, and yeah, this is going to be the last clip I record today. Tomorrow, since there's still a snow day, we're going to be recording a lot tomorrow, like maybe 3 or 4 of these. Anyways, let's get So quite simply, some basic care that you should be giving to your chickens is cleaning their brooder for the most hygienic amount of stuff. They need this about, I'd say, twice a week when they're under 6 weeks old, and when they get to 6 weeks old, then you might want to consider removing second time a week and decreasing it to only once a week. It's really simple. Usually on like a Monday or a Friday or something like that, or whatever days work best for you, as long as they're during the weekdays or the weekends. So once you decrease it to 1, that means they're getting a bit less messy, so you have a bit more like freedom with your chickens at that point. So another thing that you need to do is replace their feed about, I'd say, once every day, and replace their waterer 2 to 3 times a day, depending on how messy it is. You should also check up on them at least, and I mean at least 8 to 12 times a day when they're under 4 weeks old. And when they get above 4 weeks old, I decrease that number to like 6 to 10 times per day. So that way you know what to expect, you know what to give to them, and you know all this other stuff. So that way it's really useful to give them the basic care that they need. Well, I have some good news for you guys that are anticipating to see what we got for snow. Final number is 14 inches, so I guess they were wrong that time, but you never know what it could be next time anyway. So back to the point though, we're going to be talking about how to tell apart chickens. Obviously, there's a better word for that, but in this video I'm going to be showing you, wow, I'm stupid, but like in this segment of the video, I'm going to be showing you the basics to it. Let's begin. Now, telling apart your hens versus your roosters at birth might be really challenging, and it's a really iffy process when they just hatch, if they're like a day old or 2 days old or whatever. The reason is because, well, they look pretty similar, although for some chickens, like the sex-linked chickens, like the ISA Browns, the Cinnamon Queens, and stuff like that, those chickens are easy to tell because they have a certain pattern that's unique to each gender of the chicken. So a hen will have this pattern while a rooster will have this pattern. But with normal chickens, like 98% of them, not the case. Roosters and hens will look almost the exact same. The only difference might be between the wings on them. They might have a bit more of a different wing pattern, but it's really hard to get them because day one, they're incredibly flighty and they don't know what to expect. You don't know like all this other stuff about them quite yet. You don't know if they have any medical complications. So you can't really just take a look at those wings automatically and assume which one it is. So that's why telling them apart at birth is really hard, and that's why a lot of hatcheries and even local breeders sometimes get this wrong. Now at this point, there's specific things you're going to begin noticing about these chickens once they're at about a week old. You might notice the roosters are have a bit more like of a different wing pattern. At this point, it's a bit more safe to pick them up. Just remember to hold them with your 3 fingers. I wish I had a face cam right now. I'd show you. It's like you make like that little pitchfork formation, except you like arch them a little bit and you hold them like that. So I know it's hard to explain when I'm not actually showing you, but at the same time, yeah, I don't have a face cam right now. But what you'll notice with the hens though is that like they're a bit smaller. They don't really have any comb showing, although it's there. The roosters have a bit more of a broad comb, but it's not really necessarily a 100% accurate way to actually depict it. It's a bit more accurate once we move on to 4 weeks old though. So at this point, you might be able to tell your roosters away from your hens, but not quite yet. Now at this point, it should be a bit easier to tell who's a hen or who's a rooster because of one simple thing. Most really well-known breeds of roosters at this point will actually begin showing signs of crowing. Now, it will not be heard everywhere. It will not wake you up at 5:30 in the morning. No, it won't do any of the stuff that you think it will do. Not yet, at least. It's really quiet, and it's really easy to mistake for, like, a peep, but it's like a really, like, soft sound, but it's different than a peeping sound. I'll play you a clip right now. But you will notice that, and also they have much bigger combs, so at this point it should be easy to tell who's a hen versus who's the rooster in there, and if there's many roosters. And at this point, that's when you should decide what you want to do with the rooster. Do you want to keep the rooster, or do you want to sell him, or do you want to turn him into a 10-piece chicken McNugget? It's all up to you. Alright, so we're about to talk about moderating the temperature in the brooder, or just talking about temperature in general about chickens. There's a ton of different things about temperature that when it comes to chickens, it's really important to know. We're going to talk about just about everything that comes to heat management with chickens, with temperature. Let's go. So it is pretty important to note that the average chicken body temperature is about 102 degrees compared to our normal body temperature of, I'd say, a little bit under 98. Now, I know it's 98.6, but, I mean, I'm almost always like 96.8, so it doesn't really matter, no. So, the average chicken body temperature is about 102 to 103 degrees, so if you're wondering, yeah, it's pretty useful. So this one is actually subjective based on the week. So you want to start out your first week with 90 degrees in the brooder. And then, by the second week, you want to decrease it to 85 by slightly moving the heat lamp up. There should be a chain. You move it slightly up each week, decreasing the temperature by 5 degrees. So by the fourth week, you should have dropped that temperature to, I think, 75 degrees? 75 or 80, I can't do the math in my head right now, but like, around there. So once you've dropped the temperature to what it should be outside, then you can move them outside. I'll talk about that in just a minute. So next up we got, how warm should it really be outside when you move the chickens out there? Well, as I said in the last clip, if the brooder temperature is similar to the temperature outside, so assume it's going to be like, so assume you get them in like the middle of June, and it's the first week, and the brooder temperature is 90 degrees, and this second week you drop it to 85, but it's also 82 degrees outside. You might want to wait another week to put them outside, or at least test them outside. One thing I really want to say is that once they're older, usually I'd say if you buy them in the spring, wait till about 7 to 8 weeks old, when they usually get all their feathers in. So you want to wait until then to be able to actually like let them outside and do whatever they want. And don't put them outside all at once. I'll show you how to gradually adjust to it, by the way, in just a minute, so just you wait. So when they're a bit older, we're kind of going chronological order with the subjects here, but I want to really briefly touch on what you should do when they get into the coop. So usually, you want to keep the coop depending on the season. So if it's the winter time, you want to keep the coop at least 40 degrees, and if it's going to be really cold, but you don't want a space heater, you should like include like proper ventilation, all that whatnot, to keep the temperature stable in the 30s at the very least. You don't want it to be too cold now where they can get frostbite. In 2022 there was a night where it was -2 degrees and they got frostbite. But in 2023 there was a night where it was -13 degrees, probably even lower than that. I think it was like -16 or whatever. And guess what? The coop stayed at 39 degrees the whole time, so they were just fine in the coop. No one got frostbite that night. They were all good. They were all chill. So in the spring and the summer and fall, I'd recommend keeping it somewhere between 65 and 75. If you need to install a fan or an AC, you don't need to buy an AC unit, trust me. Well, guys, I'm recording this on the big day of February 29th, yo. It's that time of year. So I'm going to be talking about today introducing your chickens outside. So what are you going to do to introduce them outside? And I know we just talked about temperatures, so as I said, as long as the brooder temperature consistently matches up with the temperature outside, you can begin introducing them outside. This is not going to be talking about chicken coops. We'll talk about that next one, and what you should include in it, and modifications and stuff like that. That's going to be talked about a lot in this video, so strap it. So on that first day that you let your chickens outside, you don't want it to be like you want it to match the brooder temperature almost seamlessly, so they don't really notice a big difference. So like if the brooder temperature is scheduled to be 65 degrees, you want it to be maybe 66 to 70 degrees outside, so that way they get the best experience. Always, and I mean always, keep an eye on them that first 2 days. Those first 2 days, you don't want them to go too far, so you want to keep an eye on them, maybe even build a small enclosed pen that's only temporary, that you can easily take apart, so that way you can like monitor them while they're outside, make sure that they're not getting into anything terrible, and keep them outside for short periods of time and give them everything they need when they're out there. So give them constant care. I'd recommend under 2 hours, but you can do whatever. That third day is what we're about to talk about though. So on that third day, that's when you're going to want to move them, like, you don't want to move them outside just yet, but you want to, like, kind of give them a good adjustment. Make sure they have something to protect them from aerial predators and ground predators alike, but now you might want to leave them a bit like unattended for a little while, so that way you can go inside, chill, maybe hang out with your friends, whatever, while your chickens are outside. Just make sure you check up on them at the very least. If you're gonna keep them outside for 4 hours, I'd say at the very least 7 to 13 times per hour. Sometimes more, sometimes less, depends on what you have to do in their age, but on average 7-ish weeks old is when you'll first start showing them to the outside, or at least when they're fully feathered. Once they're fully feathered, which usually happens at around 9 to 12 weeks old, then you might want to move them outside, but usually do it a little while before they begin laying eggs. So that's a discussion for later probably. You can just have that discussion in the comments below, whatever. So we're about to have a discussion about what the chicken coop basics are. So we're going to talk about all the basics that you're going to need for chicken coops. This is just going to go over the basics. If you want a full tutorial, maybe by the time this video goes up on May 7th, I will have a tutorial out for you. You could check the channel. I don't even know, to be honest, what videos are coming out tomorrow, let alone next, like, month or whatever. Let's go. So when you're mapping out your chicken coop, there are a few basic rules that you must play by, and I'm about to explain all those rules right now. So the first rule is 4 to 7 square feet of floor space per chicken. So if you're building your chicken coop, you want to take, I'd say around 6-ish square feet per chicken is what I currently go with. And then I take that 6, and I multiply it by the total number of chickens. Basic math. So you take 6 by 12, and there you go. You get 72 square feet of space at the very least in the chicken coop. So if you could take the number, if you have 12 chickens and you multiply that by 12, you should have 144 square feet of square feet of floor space for the chicken coop at the very least. So that's the rules I go by. I think the legal minimum is like 3 or 4. I don't remember the exact number, but it's something like that. Another rule that you should go by is to always add hurricane ties to the roof rafters of your chicken coop, if you're building one, of course, because this right here is going to help tie down the roof whenever you get a strong storm. If you're like in an area that gets a ton of tornadoes and stuff like that, then you might as well put these on there just in case a weaker one comes by and is able to rip the roof off of it and not blow the whole thing away, because it will not take a lot to do that. Now next up, we're talking about stuff that should be positioned in the chicken coop. There should be a ton of stuff that should be positioned in different locations. For starters, when you open up the door, I'd recommend having the nesting boxes on the right and have many different levels of roosting bars. So usually you have the base roosting bar, which is just for getting up for most chickens. They like to roost high. Gotta remember that. Chickens will find a way to go as high as they possibly can. So if you put a roosting bar low, they'll find a way to get up higher than that. Whether it takes many ways or just one, they'll find a way to get higher than that one roosting bar. So then add a second one that's a bit higher than that, and then usually all the way across on the longer side of the coop, that's where you'll usually add the third bar, because that's where most of the chickens will end up staying overnight. That's where our chickens stay at the very least. It will have to do a little bit of engineering with that, do all the measurements, find out the measurements of your chicken coop and whatever if you're going to add this. And as for nesting boxes, as soon as you walk in, right on the right, you should add at least 3 to 5 nesting boxes. I'd say I'd probably have 4 chickens per nesting box. That way it's as least cramped as possible. So if you have 12 chickens, that'll mean you should have at the very least 3 nesting boxes in the chicken coop. Now, where the doors are placed in the chicken coop is actually pretty important. So usually you'd have 2 doors when you're having a big chicken coop and just 1 when you have a smaller one. So that big door is usually like right at the top. It's usually the human access door. So if you need to get in there and clean out the bottom of the coop, that's where you'd want to enter in from. But if you want just a small door like your chickens can get out of, then you're going to use that small door. Let's usually cut into that door for that specific reason, so you can get them out. You can install a ramp that might be like attached to the coop or whatever, but I think the most useful one is an automatic coop door, and that small door should be used as a backup just in case the automatic coop door decides it wants to do what most automatic coop doors do and break down. Our PetFlock's automatic coop door is genuinely breaking down like every 3 weeks. It has more issues than most modern cars do. That's how crazy automatic coop doors are, so don't rely on them too much. But I will say, it's one of the greatest modifications you can add to the chicken coop. I'll talk about modifications in the next bit. So in this segment, I'm going to show you some chicken coop modifications that you can add. We're not going to go too far in depth because I'm going to have to record many of these, but let's get into this, everyone. So an automatic chicken coop door is one of the most important things you could possibly add to your chicken coop for many different reasons. Well, for starters, the automatic coop door, what it will do is it'll allow your chickens to go outside whenever they really want. They could choose their own schedule with this door, mainly because it has sensors on it that'll detect when the sun is coming up, so it'll be able to rise up. The only issue with this though is that, well, it breaks down a whole lot, as I was talking about my chicken coops bit. So you want to be careful with this, and that's why you don't want to have this as your only form of entrance to the chicken coop. You want many different ways to be able to actually access the coop. So another modification that you can add to your chicken coop is electricity. Now the reason that electricity is super cool is because you could actually plug things in out there, be able to plug in a fan and air conditioning. Just don't add in a whole AC unit because, well, those things are $25,000, and I don't think you're willing to spend that much money on chickens. Yeah, I get that you might be able to pour in a few $100s, but not $20,000 into raising chickens. No thank you. I'd rather spend $20,000 on something way better than that. So electricity though is one of the cheaper ones you can add. You can add it to you can kind of plug it. You could add a light inside the chicken coops. That way you can go in there at night, check and see who's there, have it all simple. Or you could use it just for the simple heated waterers and stuff like that if it's really cold, or just convenience. Or you could add or you could just add an AC to the area, or just whatever you want to keep the coop cool during the summer or whenever it's gonna be really hot where you're at. Now double doors are really useful, especially if you're going to have a rooster in the flock. Now I have one door on one side of the coop and another door on the other side of the coop. This only works if the roosting bars aren't in the way, because for a lot of the times they are, but if they're not in the way, then good for you. You can go ahead and build the second door, or cut a hole into the coop and add the second door. Some coops come installed with 2 doors in them, specifically so that way you can escape the rooster, or it's just convenient to have 2 doors. So that way you open up the door on one end, scoop all the chicken fish shavings out of there, and then you can exit the other end and then grab the eggs and go out that way and go around. It's pretty convenient, I'll say. Well, we are going to be covering moving chickens outside today. So today we're going to be talking about how to move them outside. That first time they're going to be going outside, they're going to spend their first night outside in the chicken coop. And I want to show you how to actually do this properly in this bit. So first of all, you need to set everything up. You need the chicken coop, and for that first night, even if you want to free range your chickens, ultimately you want to start them out in a yard, regardless of if you want to free range them ultimately or keep them in a pen. You want to start out with a pen, and you don't want it to be a big one. If you're going to move them to a bigger yard, you want to wait about maybe a few weeks. We'll get into that in just a second, but you do want to start out by setting up the coop, and I'd say set up the coop in an area where they're probably going to spend a lot of their time. Look at the basics, look at what you know about chickens. And if you find an area with high vegetation, put the coop near that area so that way the chickens don't get lost. So next, you want to bring the chickens into the coop gradually. I'd say move them outside when they're about 8 to 10 weeks old. At that point, it's pretty much a guarantee they're fully feathered, even though they get all their feathers around 5 to 7 weeks old. At this point, you should really consider all the specifics on this sort of stuff. So then move them outside, and you want to start them outside that first day. Now this first night is actually really iconic for all the wrong reasons, because this is the night where you'll probably lose more chickens than you probably will during a single predator attack. Well, maybe not for us. We lost 12 chickens in an attack once, but that was completely separate. So this first night is going to be a night where you are going to need to prepare to be outside, immersed in the nature. And by doing so, you're going to be looking for those chickens, because that first night, they're going to be scattered. Look for any loopholes they could have gotten, and I want you to count them. So if you don't, they'll probably find a way to roost somewhere else. You want to move them into the coop, but here's the thing. You're not going to actually let them out the next day. We'll get into that in just a second. But you want to move them into that coop that night. You want to start them outside during the day, as I just said, but then at night you want to carry them into the coop. Some of them will find their way into the coop because they know it's the safety area, but others will stay outside. I'll say probably find, if you say you have 12 chickens, I'd say about 6 to 10 of them will make it into the coop. and really 2 to 6 of them will end up not making it into the coop. So you need to look for those 2 to 6. They shouldn't be too hard to find, but some people find them in the most random locations. Like, you could put them out there in the chicken yard, and like then you get a call from like someone who lives down in like 2 states below you, and they'll say, "Oh, I found your chicken, yo," because they'll find the most crazy places to hide, I swear. So as I talked about in the previous clip, getting them used to stuff is going to be really, really, really important. I know it sounds insane and really lucrative, but it's quite simple. You really need to put them into that chicken coop for, I'd say, 2 to 4 days. And you don't want to let them outside. You want to put all the stuff in there, their food, their water, and you want to replace it, as I said, 2 times a day, each of them, respectively. But you also want to give them treats, say, "Oh, good job, you're doing all this good stuff." But here's the thing. 1 day in the coop is probably not sufficient enough. It'll tell them, "Oh, this is the coop." They'll spend the day in there and then nothing will happen. And the same thing will happen as the first night. 2 days will get the job done barely. 3 days is what I'd really recommend. 3 days is that Goldilocks zone. You'll get it perfectly right there. But then 4 days is kind of pushing it. Like, they're really going to know it. And if you're any more than 4 days, yeah, consider not doing that. 4 days at the very maximum. You don't want them to spend the whole work week inside. Like, they'd be going outside and getting all those greens out there. So you want to wait for that to happen, and then you want to move them outside after all that's done. Now, most likely what will end up happening is that you get like these chickens, and they'll get used to all this sort of stuff. So eventually, I'd say after about 3 weeks, you can consider moving them to a much larger yard. That's what I'd personally do. Now, the transition from hen to pullet is quite the interesting one, to say the least. So I'm about to explain everything that goes down in between those 2 times, which is usually about a few weeks, and then we'll get into egg laying in the next one, which is insane. We're about 30 minutes into the video at this point, which is the halfway mark, so you can officially say you made it halfway through this video. So some of the first signs you'll end up seeing when you have these chickens that are about to transition to pullets, the first thing you'll notice is that their comb begins to grow quickly. Their comb is that thing on the top of their head, their wattle gets longer, and it looks all... And like, all of a sudden, like, the chickens will start being friendly. That usually happens right before they begin laying eggs. But usually the first couple signs you'll notice are those, and their peep begins to transition into a full-blown cluck. This will start at around, I'd say, 9 weeks old. So once the chicken's around 9-10 weeks old, you'll notice that they're no longer peeping. They're peeping deeper and deeper until it sounds like they're clucking almost. And then by the time... And some chickens will do it a lot earlier than others. Just so you know, if you haven't heard a rooster crow, but you hear a chicken that you're suspicious of being a rooster making clucking noises, then that's most likely a hen. So, as we talked about telling them apart earlier in this video, you might remember that clip. At this point, it's pretty much a 100% guarantee that they are a hen regardless, because it's quite that simple. Roosters don't make that type of sounds, and also, if you're concerned about a hen possibly being a rooster, and they start making, like, the sound that, like, egg-laying chickens will make, yeah, that's also a hen. I'll get into that in just a minute. So it is important to note that chickens will not lay eggs as soon as they hatch out. Some people think that, but I think most of you guys know that it's quite simple information. So, what are some things that you'll notice right before they lay eggs? I was just talking about this stuff. They'll begin ducking down, showing signs of respect, being way friendlier, allowing you to pick them up, pet them, do all this stuff. They'll be much friendlier around you, and that's how you'll immediately know that they're getting ready to lay eggs. Usually this happens, I'd say, about 2 to 4 weeks before they begin laying eggs. They lay eggs at around 18 to 20 weeks old, depending on the chicken. Some chickens may be 24 weeks old, but for most of them it's 18 to 20 weeks old. Sometimes you'll actually get a hen that's supposed to lay eggs way later than the others and will end up being your first. There's no known age to tell when the chicken will actually begin laying eggs, so it's all based on statistics and averages and stuff like that. So, quite frankly, most chickens will end up laying eggs at around the same time, so you'll get your first eggs, and just so you know, those eggs will be really tiny. Like, they'll be small. Like, usually if you're gonna make like scrambled eggs or whatever, you want to take 2, and you usually take 2 eggs to put on your egg sandwich. You want to take 4, because these are half the size, usually, of the eggs they'll end up laying later down the line. They'll lay these eggs for the first couple weeks, and we'll get into more of that egg laying stuff in the next bit. When your chickens just begin laying eggs, you'll need to change up a whole lot of stuff. Like, first of all, when they're about 16 weeks old, you want to change up their feed from the chick starter all the way up to the egg layer pellets. I'd say they're around the same amount of money. You can find them in Tractor Supply for like $20 to $40. I know chicken feed's getting expensive. Yep, unfortunately. But the biggest thing here is switching them from that stuff, installing the nesting boxes, and also, I just forgot to mention in the last clip, but when they lay their eggs, you will notice that they will be laying them in the most random locations. One day you'll find an egg underneath this random rock. The next day you'll find it at your front doorstep. The next day you'll actually find it in a location where they're supposed to lay the eggs. And then the next day after, you'll find that egg on your desk, because they have no clue where to lay their eggs yet. So don't get mad at them for that just yet. But if they're like 2 years old and they're still laying eggs randomly, then yeah, I think it might be something you should talk up with your chickens. Yo, what's going on, everyone? Today is April 7th, 2024, and we are about to talk about a guide on eggs. Tomorrow is the solar eclipse, so I won't be able to record anything tomorrow. Maybe I might be able to record something on the car, but I don't know, to be honest. So today we're just going to be talking about a guide on eggs, so let's get into it. So collecting eggs is quite simple. All you need really is something to collect the eggs with, and then some shoes. So what you want to do is you want to go and find the locations where the chickens lay their eggs the most. And you want to go check those, I'd say around 2 to 4 times a day for eggs. There's many locations you can hold eggs. You could just, if you're going to collect an egg or two for like a breakfast or something, then you just hold them in your pockets or your hands. But if you're going to go collect a massive amount of eggs, then what you should do is you should like hold it in your, you should go like grab like a massive bowl, or better yet, something to collect the eggs with, an egg collector, whatever those things are called. You carry it around in there, and you can just walk out to the chicken yard, and then you can collect all the eggs. Collecting them is actually quite simple, and don't worry about like anything that could be on it, like feathers or chicken crap or whatever. Don't worry about all the stuff that's on it. Just put it in there. We'll worry about that stuff later. But there's many uses for it now. So now that you've collected those eggs, now what you can do is you can just chill, clean them, whatever. I'll show you how to clean them in the next clip, and some other basics that you might not know about it. Now next up we got cleaning out those eggs. Now cleaning out the eggs is quite simple. What you do is you take a nice thing, like a nice scrubbing thing, and you scrub it down, or better yet, you get a sponge, and you can scrub it down a little bit, and then you wash all the soap off, and then you put it back into it. Now now here's where stamps come in useful, or stickers, whatever. You could use a stamp or a sticker, whatever. Label the eggs based on, you could either color code them as well. Color coding is really useful. Color code them. For me personally, what I do is I have green, which is going to equal the eggs have not yet been washed, and blue, which means those eggs have been washed. Now here's the kicker about this that you might not know quite yet, or you might know. Comment down below if you know this. Well, what if I were to tell you that if your eggs aren't washed, you don't have to put them in the fridge. If they're washed, put them in the fridge. All the eggs you buy at the store are all washed. Put them in the fridge. I'm talking about the ones that you get outside, but like there's like nothing like really useful. Like you haven't like found anything to do with them yet. You don't want to clean them off yet. There's nothing really useful to do with them yet. Guess what you can do? You don't have to put them in the fridge. You can just put it elsewhere for storage. It's really convenient. You put them up in your pantry, or an area where like your pets can't reach it, of course. Now, selling eggs is something that just about every single chicken owner will do at least once in their life. There's a ton of people out there that are willing to sell their eggs, and I'm going to show you how to do it really quickly. So you're going to get a cooler, because you can't just plug in a refrigerator outside the road and just put your eggs in there. I mean, you could, but it would require a whole lot of electricity, and you might need an extension cord for that sort of stuff. But basically what you do is you put as many eggs as you can in the cooler. Obviously ice at the bottom. You should know how to use a cooler, right? If you don't, then you just put the ice on the bottom and then the stuff on top of it, and there you go. I remember using a cooler when we were out of power for 8 days back in 2020. It was quite interesting, to say the least. Those right there are quite simple. So what you're going to want to do, you want to put up the price. Usually most people sell their eggs for about $3 to $5, which is cheaper than what you'll find them in the store. At the store, they're like $7. I'm not joking. A few years ago, last year around this time, they were like $10. Like, bro, who is marking up these eggs, yo? But the best part about it, though, is that there's going to be a ton of people that need eggs. But here's the thing. You only want to sell the eggs that you've washed. You don't want to sell the eggs that aren't quite yet washed, because people will not buy the eggs with chicken feathers all stuck up on them. You want to make sure those eggs are thoroughly washed, and that's what the cooler is for, is to keep them cool during the day. At the end of the day, take them all out, and then you rinse and repeat each day. Now, there's a big difference between layer or production hens and just normal hens. Most people just have normal hens, and those normal hens will lay significantly less amount of eggs than the hens than the production hens. Now, here's the thing: the layer hens or production hens will live significantly shorter. Like, you could have an average life expectancy of like 3 to 4 years, versus an average hen living about 4 to 10 years, depending on which breed of chicken it is, any genetic complications with the breed of chicken, and all that sort of stuff. It's really important to look into this sort of stuff, and that's why personally, if you're getting your first chickens, I would recommend not getting production layers and just getting basic hens that like get the job done. They lay you some eggs, usually about 150 to 250 a year, but not so many that it'll cause their egg system to be overwhelmed and cause diseases such as, but not limited to, egg yolk peritonitis, and worst one of the most common ones as well, is egg bound, which is actually treatable, believe it or not. It does require immediate medical attention, so you should bring it to the vet as soon as possible, but it is technically possible to treat it. I'd say the survival rate of this is, I'd say, around 50 to 60% probably. Alright, so now we're about to talk about chicken yard accessories. And yes, yesterday was the solar eclipse and we drove 15 hours, which is insane. But today we're just going to be talking about the chicken yard accessories, stuff that you can add to the chicken yard to make it better and just better in general for the chickens. We're going to show you a lot of stuff you can add, and we're going to go over them today. Now, believe it or not, yes, chickens can actually use swings, and although they won't go too high, like they can't go like above like maybe 5 inches on the swings, they can easily like at least use it, and it's really useful for them because they love this sort of stuff. They love being able to do stuff during the day. So swings are one of the biggest things that you can add. You can buy little chicken swings. They won't really swing on them. They'll use it as roosts, which we'll get into roosting ones in the next one. But chickens will love this sort of stuff because, quite simply, they love roosting on just about everything. If you'll find your chickens just randomly roosting in the middle of like a tree or whatever. I mean, back in November, I made a couple shorts where like we were finding chickens randomly scattered across the yard and like random fruit trees just hanging up there doing nothing, just chilling, you know, doing whatever they want, doing whatever chickens do in a day. So they'll love this sort of stuff for the roosting aspect and the fun aspect. Yes, believe it or not, chickens will use a playground, and yes, by playground I mean like you could have a swing attached to this one, but chickens will love these because you can add different things. You add levels that they can go up to, like sort of like a ladder they can climb up, and then they have areas to roost up there, just hang out, or you could add a few things there to make it more convenient. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. It could just be maybe like it could literally just be like a couple feet tall. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, over-engineered type stuff. All you really need is just a swing. Well, that's not necessary, but it's something you should consider adding. A ladder, 2 ladders on both sides, and by ladder, I'm not talking about the metal ladders that you can climb up to the roof and clean out the gutters on. I'm talking about like a ladder you can engineer into the playground with like a saw and all that sort of stuff. It's really cool. It's really simple to add this sort of stuff there, and you also want to like maybe add some shavings or an area for them to hang out at the top and a way for them to get down back to the ground. It's really easy, and it's something they'll love. And yes, the only roosting bars you don't have to always be in the chicken coop. You can add roosting bars outside of the chicken coop for them to just chill, do whatever, because they love roosting. You'll find that they'll usually roost on random things. Like as I was talking about, we have a metal post that came out in, I don't know where it came from. It just came with the property when we bought it in 2018. The chickens currently love using in their yard. They can like rest on it, and it's really cool. It's like some like metal piping, some old PVC piping. I don't know where it came from, to be honest. But like the chickens love it. They don't care where it came from. They don't care about the origin story of some random PVC piping in the ground. It could be anything. This could be some logs. This could be some old PVC piping. This could be something already built there. This could be something that you engineered into the ground. It doesn't matter, to be honest. As long as the chickens can play on it, it doesn't matter. Because trust me, the chickens will find a way to roost on just about everything. So you want to give them places to roost, so that way you can make sure they don't go elsewhere to find areas to roost, because, oh, trust me, they'll find the most random locations to roost. It's also necessary to have a place where your chickens can hide other than the coop. So in case like a predator comes around, like especially hawks or eagles or whatever, or falcons, whatever, if they come around and try to find your chickens, they won't be able to find them, or at least they'll be in a protected area that the bird can't get into. So specifically, what we like to do is you could like take like all you need is for this really simple build is 2 cinder blocks and I almost said PVC piping. I meant a piece of plywood that you could put on the top. You place those 2 cinder blocks down vertically, then you put or horizontally, doesn't matter. I mean, I prefer vertically because that's about the same size as the chicken. And then you put the plywood right on top of it, and there you go. You got yourself a nice area for the chickens to hang out in. And you could also add other areas of hiding in there too. You could grow like some tall bushes in there for them to hide in. Just make sure they don't grow anything they'll eat, because they'll find a way to get to that every single time. They love the garden too. They'll love hiding in the trellises and stuff like that when the garden's up. Alright, so in this bit, we're going to talk about treating illnesses with your chickens. Believe it or not, there's a lot of different illnesses, and I'm going to show you how to treat just about every one of them. And we're not going to like talk about like actual treatments and medications a little bit. We might touch a little bit on those, but like we're just going to show you the process it will take before and after you send them to the vet office and all that sort of stuff. So let's get into it. So the first thing you want to do when you realize that one of your chickens is potentially sick or hurt or anything like that is you want to separate them, but you gotta identify who the chicken is first. And once you've identified that chicken, maybe you named the chicken, maybe you've done all this sort of stuff, I want you to identify the chicken first and see what's up. Get a general consensus. You want to pick up the chicken and get a general consensus of what's going on. Is like her foot swollen up? Does she have bumblefoot? Does she have like egg yolk peritonitis? What does she have? What do you think she has? The next thing I want you to then do is I want you to then get on the phone with a veterinarian. But also, right after you get off the line, I want you to set up a brooder, just in case this is like less of a serious issue like bumblefoot with their survival rates around 85%, where you'll probably make it out. I mean, we had 3 chickens that have had bumblefoot. Of those 3, 2 of them made it out alive. The other one was Sprinkles, unfortunately, who never made it out alive. So I want you to set up a place for that chicken to stay if it's a less serious disease, but if it's a more serious disease, you want to get like a cat carrier, and you want to put some shavings in there. And then you want to get the chicken a little bit of food and water in a cup. If they're going to stay in the house, you want to be separate from the flock. You don't want to like have her like with the flock, because they're going to torment those chickens, because that's the way chickens work. Because they're natural animals, they're going to be tormenting this chicken. And then the next thing I want you to do is I want you to separate her, as I just said, put her in there. If she's had a less serious disease, as I said, put her in the brooder inside the house or in a barn or a shed, whatever, as long as it's warm. You might need a heat lamp if it's necessary. If it's a way more serious disease that requires immediate medical attention, then put her in the cat carrier or whatever, and then put her in the car, and make sure you adjust the car to the proper temperature. Now, usually the veterinarian will leave some form of notes. So if the chicken makes it out of the hospital alive, which I'd say about like 75 to 80% of the time your chicken will probably come out of the hospital alive. You might need many visits to the vet hospital, but for the most part the chickens will likely come out alive. You should ask the veterinarian like what was wrong. They most likely provide you that sort of stuff, and they'll also tell you what RXs and stuff like that to prescribe for your chicken. You want to maybe prescribe some over-the-counter medications and all that sort of stuff. They'll tell you exactly what you need to prescribe. So then, usually the veterinary hospital will have the medications all set and ready there, just in case this were to happen. So they have like all these different treatments. They'll recommend stuff like if they have like bumblefoot, probably an Epsom salt bath, or like some other medications that the chicken might need, like painkillers or something like that. I don't know if chickens actually have painkillers, but like they'll probably give you all this information about stuff you should prescribe for your chicken. So follow that stuff. They know exactly what's best for your chicken, because they probably have years of knowledge. Because I actually know someone who's a vet, and it's a long process to actually be able to become one. So they're going to give you good information that you should follow. So now it is best to follow up exactly what the vet told you, exactly what they needed to do. So write down the prescriptions and stuff like that, how often your chicken should take them, and all this sort of stuff in your notes. In your notes app on your phone. If you don't have a notes app on your phone, take a picture. You probably have done this before. You take a picture, a black picture, and then you put text on it that says exactly what it is. Or if you don't have a phone, you write in your notes, hang it up on your fridge. And if you don't have a fridge, put it on your wall. And if you don't have a wall, then I don't know what else to say. But find a way to store this information. And by the way, chickens hate having to take stuff that is given to them via syringe. So it might be a little bit harder to do that. Maybe you can call up one of your friends that knows how to give a chicken treatment through syringe. But for the most part, chickens will not like it, but you're on your own with that one. So after a while, if you're noticing drastic outcomes that like change it like for the better, then it might be best to like, yeah, this chicken's getting better. Maybe we should move her outside. I'll get to that in just a second. But if the chicken's getting worse, then you might want to consult with your veterinarian, have something like surgically removed or something like that. Or unfortunately, in the worst case scenario, your chicken might unfortunately pass away due to that. Now, assuming that your chicken survived this, it's best to put them back to the flock once you've noticed that most of their disease or whatever you sent them into the hospital for is pretty much good. It's good to go. There's nothing really left of it. It's not affecting the chicken too much anymore. So at this point, it's best to assume that you can add the chicken back to the flock. Usually this is about, I'd say, 2 to 3 weeks after your original prognosis there. So you want to put them back in the flock. And you want to, like, maybe, like, don't do it like you'd add, like, a new chicken. I'll talk about new chickens in the next clip, in the next bit. But, like, for the time being, you want to slowly but surely add them back to the flock, and eventually they'll allow the chicken back into the flock, and then it'll be that, and then your chicken will be good. Alright, so in this bit, we're going to be talking about introducing brand new chickens into your flock. So yes, it's quite simple. It's going to be a quick and easy and over one, and by quick and easy and over one, I'm talking this is probably going to be like 4 to 6 minutes long, but oh well. If you're watching this far in the video, that's crazy. I just want to quickly remind you, be sure to click that like and subscribe button. Hopefully viewer retention isn't already lower than like 3% at this point, so let's continue. So a lot of the times, if you have 2 or more flocks, you'll sometimes swap chickens between flocks because it's just cool like that. But what chicken do you want to choose? Well, you want to choose one that looks like it won't be, well, there doesn't really have to be any like look factors into this sort of stuff. So really, it doesn't matter which chicken you choose, to be honest. As long as you choose a chicken that's alive and healthy, then you're good to go, it looks like. Alright, so next up we got the introduction process. So the introduction process goes as follows. So basically, what you do is you add the chicken to the flock, as I was talking about with like the veterinarian stuff. You add it in slowly but surely. You add the chicken to the flock slowly over the duration of time. So you can like keep her in the flock during the day and then move her back to her old flock at night. Or you can go option 2 and just throw her in the flock and say, oh, you fend for yourself. Now there's something really important you need to understand about chickens. And that is, guess what? Their pecking order is a really real thing, and it is a pain to have to do all this sort of like complications and stuff like that just for your chicken to live in the flock sound for you. Now for the most part, I will say, for the most part, the chickens don't really care if they have a new flock chicken, because wow, I cannot talk it. They have a new chicken in the flock. I'm reading the script wrong. But they don't care if they have a new chicken in the flock, as long as that chicken isn't going to cause or stir up any issues in the flock, then they're going to be just fine. They're going to not care. But if that chicken's going to stir up any issues, then they're probably going to be fighting. For the most part, there isn't a whole lot of fighting, especially from my experience with the pet flock, at least. They're just welcoming these chickens with open arms because the pet flock wants to grow and expand. I don't know. So if you still don't know what a pecking order is, it's a pretty complicated hierarchy of chickens. So it's basically a triangle, the social pyramid, if you will. At the bottom of the triangle, you get the chickens that no one likes, the chickens that seem to be revolted on based on the flock. I know it's not really a symmetrical triangle, but you get what I'm trying to say. Very few chickens are usually down here. You then have like the lower class, where like they're just like alright, they're not crazy. This is also a small amount of chickens. And then you have the middle class. That's where most of those chickens will end up lying. So like if you have if you have like a flock of 12 chickens, you'll have 2 in the bottom 2, and then you'll have like maybe 6 of them in this group. So you already have 8 of the 12 chickens in an order by the time you reach the 3rd level on the pyramid. And the chickens love being in this position because it just means that they're kind of neutral. They don't really have to fight for their territory. The bottom ones are keep on trying to go up to the middle class. The middle class chickens just chill. And then we have a level up where we have, and then we have one level up above that where you have the sentinel chickens. Those chickens are the ones that are like, they're kind of like the ones that kind of like respect the top. So you have 3 of those in a flock of 12 chickens, so you're up to 11, and then you have the top of the pecking order. Basically, the chicken that rules above the entire flock sits on that pedestal at the #1 spot, doesn't care about any other chicken's feelings or all that whatnot. This chicken is the absolute top of the line chicken, and doesn't really respect anyone else, but also puts all the flow and the leadership into the flock. So it gives him all these values that the flock needs. Now in this bit, we're going to be talking about how to hatch chickens. Do you want to know what's insane? The fact that there's only, I see only 3 more bits I have to cover on in this video. So this video is going to be a tad bit over an hour long, probably, but when you factor in the credits, probably about the same length as My Chicken's Christmas, maybe a minute or 2 longer. So yeah, I just want to congratulate all of you guys that are still watching. Comment the number, I don't know, 56 if you're still watching, I don't know. So first things first, you want to select your chicken breed. Now, here's what I'm going to use an example that actually happened here in real life back in the summer of 2022. So we wanted to hatch out some Easter eggers and a black copper Marin, and we had 2 roosters at the time. We had Waldo and Falcon. Unfortunately, we only have one of them left, and unfortunately, it's my worst rooster, Falcon. So we chose the breeds that we wanted, and we figured out how to mix them together. For our Easter eggers, we'd take Falcon and we mix them with an Easter egger because it's 2 Easter eggers, and you combine it and you get another Easter egger that looks unique. For the fact that we wanted to hatch out some black copper Marins, we specifically needed to also get a black copper Marin mixed with a black copper Marin, and we also wanted an olive egger, so we had to mix a black copper Marin rooster with a Easter egger hen. It's really important for this combination. You could also create really your own breed when you're hatching out these chickens. It's really cool and unique to try out. Alright, so the next thing you're going to need is fertilized eggs. So when you have a hen and a rooster, you get fertilized eggs. So once you find a brand new fertilized egg, I want you to take it out, and I want you to get yourself a broody chicken, which we'll talk about in the next clip. But if you don't, what you want to do is you want to keep it in an incubator. You could either hatch it 2 ways. You could use an incubator to hatch it, or you could use a chicken to hatch it. Now, the incubator will turn the eggs by itself. The chickens will actually, turn the eggs by... Wow, I cannot read a script. The chickens will turn the eggs by themselves as well. So, it's quite simple. It's a simple concept. They'll turn the eggs. They'll communicate with them. The incubator won't do that. The chicken hatching it out is a bit less reliable, though. But the chicken will actually help hatch out those baby chickens. That's the cool part. Alright, so when these chickens hatch out, you will notice some of them won't make it and some will. But what I want you to do as soon as they hatch out is I want you to put them in a brooder, either with the broody chicken or just put them in a brooder. And as I was talking about earlier, you can repeat all the processes I talked about in this video. You can literally rewind. You can duplicate your tab right now, rewind to the beginning and see what's up back there. 90 degrees, just a reminder, keep the brooder at 90 degrees because that's what the chicken will be having the temperature set at. So it's quite simple. It's really just about having that brooder temperature nice and warm. And then on that second day, I want you to check for any potential deformities or any of this potential stuff that could hurt the chicken. But if you notice none of that, then guess what? You're good to go. But if you do notice a deformity, you won't be able to remove it by yourself unless you're a veterinarian, which in that case, go ahead, do whatever you want. If it's like a deformity that can easily be removed, then you can send it off to the vet. They'll take care of it just for you. If it's a deformity that cannot be removed, that is potentially permanent and life-threatening, then they'll either A, just let the chicken live its life, it'll probably have a shortened lifespan, or B, they'll just put the chicken down so it doesn't have to go through all that pain. Which, I think option A is probably more common, but option B is something you'll occasionally hear of every now and then. Alright, so in this bit, we're going to be talking about how to retire your chickens. So once your chickens reach a certain age, it's kind of their breaking point. They don't really know where else to go. So this is kind of just their limit. So I'm going to show you how you can retire them, some things to do, tips and tricks to help retire them, and stuff to expect along the way as well. So when you retire your chickens, there's really a certain age where you usually retire your chickens, and that is usually, I'd say, at around 3 to 6 years, somewhere between the two. It's usually towards the end of their life, because at that point, they don't really have a lot left to live for, so why not give them some good stuff at the end of their life that they've been waiting their whole life to get? Usually, some of the first signs you'll notice is that their egg count decreases steadily to the point where, like, you're barely getting any eggs. Like, you could have once be getting about 300 eggs a year, but now you're getting like 125 to 150 eggs a year. And that's when you notice, yeah, there's like, it's either something's wrong with the chicken, which is not likely, or your chicken's just getting older, which usually happens at around 4 years old. We do have 4-year-old chickens, and I have noticed their egg count has also fallen off, but they still go broody, so I wouldn't really retire them until around maybe next year. Next year is probably going to be the year to retire it. Or when they like go through like this, when they go through molts and it takes them a bit longer to do the molts, and they have like older feathers. Their feathers have less color to them. They have less depth to them, if you will. You will notice all this sort of stuff leading up to the time where it's best to retire. So there are many things that you could do to help your chickens retire, and I'm going to show you a few of them right now. So the first thing that you could do is maybe you could give them some more treats daily, because at the end of the day, they're not going to live for too much longer. Chickens, as I usually say, live for around 4 to 10 years. Usually I'd lean closer to 4 if you have more production layer hens, but I'd lean a bit closer to 10 if you have more like chickens that are a bit more casual. So our pet flock will probably live until, if regarding there's no predatory issues, they're probably going to live probably 6 to 9 years is my guess. But I could be wrong about that, and that's probably going to bite me later now that I just said that. But I'd say probably 6 to 9 years is what I would expect out of most chickens. Although roosters, I will say, you probably retire them a bit earlier, like maybe at around 3 to 4 years. Because roosters, especially my rooster Falcon, I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up collapsing like one of our meat chickens did recently, because I'm not joking, he's like 11 or 12 pounds. He could barely walk on his own. So bigger roosters, probably I'd say like over 6 pounds, 6 to 12 pound roosters, probably will get around like 3 to 5 years out of him. I'd lean closer to 3 for Falcon. He turned 3 back in February, so he's probably gonna be living to 4, but I don't think he'll live much further past that. But if that doesn't kill him, then his behavior will, because if he doesn't stop doing the stuff that he currently does, well, he's gonna end up being put on a dinner plate by the end of the spring. So it's something to consider when you're retiring them. Give them some treats, give them a ton of good stuff, give them love and attention, and all this sort of cool stuff. Now, I'll be brief with this section, but believe it or not, there are a ton of special needs chickens out there. Kit Kat is kind of a special needs chicken. The reason was because she did have to go through some medical attention early on because she had a deformity, but not really anymore. These chickens are chickens with like medical conditions usually as they get older, especially the ones that weighed heavier earlier on, as I talked about with my rooster Falcon as an example, or just chickens with special needs. You really want to give them some congratulations, because they usually live a bit shorter lives than the rest of the chickens do because of this condition that they could possibly end up having. So I'd say celebrate your chickens, give them some more love and attention. Go out there tomorrow morning and maybe pet them all, give them a nice, say what's up to your chickens tomorrow morning, because you never know, one of these days something could break into the coop, take all your chickens away from you, or worse yet, someone, because we've not had that issue yet, but oh boy, there's a lot of people around here complaining about people taking their chickens, which sucks. But you never know when this could happen to you though. Well, we got 2 more short bits left on this video, so I hope you guys have enjoyed so far. Be sure to leave your feedback in the comments below, or maybe even the live chat if this is premiering. I don't quite yet know the schedule for that one quite yet, but we're going to talk about chicken loss, which is which is going to be a shorter one with only one segment to it, because it's quite simple, and I'm going to show you how to cope with the loss, and I'm also going to show you what to do next time so this doesn't happen to you for a while. So we've all felt this feeling before. Well, not all of us, but some of us have felt this feeling before. We go out to the chicken yard, we see feathers everywhere, and sometimes you might come across a dead chicken, but for the most part, you probably will not be coming across a dead chicken. You'll probably just be coming across a pile of feathers and a bad taste in your mouth about this. You might be wondering, like, yo, who did this? You might be sad, you might be pissed, you have all the right to feel these feelings, So, if you actually have game cameras set up in your yard, you could look back at those, or at least make an assumption based on like what you know is in the area, based on all this sort of stuff. And once you've figured out what it is, maybe the issue, there's one of two things you could do: just A, ignore it, or B, maybe you can go out there if you have a hunter's license, of course, and hunt it. But just remember, you can't hunt everything that kills your chickens. I mean, you can hunt them using sound and scare them away from your property, but that's really the best you can do. Anything else will just cause it a minor inconvenience. It'll just make it move to the next batch of chickens up the street. So you're really doing yourself a really small favor, but the neighbors, not so much. So I will say, losing a chicken is a really big thing, and I will say, if you do come across the dead body of a chicken, you should bury it. If you notice like a bite mark or something like that, bury it. If you named it, give it a name, make a gravestone, whatever. I don't care what you do with it, as long as it ends up in the ground. But if it died because of an illness, then send it to the hospital to get it cremated, because you don't want all that stuff going into the ground. You can do a few things when you cremate the chicken. Like, we still have sprinkles and with the duck's ashes stored away in a safe compartment. However, the rest of the chickens just end up in the ground, because that's where they have to go, because, well, it'll help the ground around them, so at least you know your chicken's contributing to something good in this world. Wow, all this time later, man, and we are here on the last day before this video releases. By the time this is up, well, congratulations, you watched it this far, or maybe you're watching the premiere chat and you just hopped in, or you popped in like 5 minutes ago, whatever. Comment, as I said, 56, as I said earlier, in the chat or in the comments, whatever. But we're just going to do some real talk about chickens for this last couple minutes that I have here. We're just going to cover a few points here, and then we're going to cut to the outro, and then it's going to be crazy, yo. We're almost there. Alright, so, well, it's time to talk some real stuff about chickens. Well, in my opinion, I think chickens are one of the greatest first livestock that you could buy, and to be honest, I'd say look out for some ducks too. You could consider getting yourself a few ducks if you want with them. They'll go pretty well with them. It does require a little bit of training though. Some more real talk about chickens though is that just how calm they are. They're really their temperament's really good, and they're temperate in general, so I'd recommend them to just about anyone who can have them, as I said. And to be honest with you, I'd say chickens are probably one of the greatest animals that you could probably get. As I said earlier, like $3 to $10 for an average chicken. If you want a more luxurious, exquisite chicken, maybe you can go up like $50. But I wouldn't really see myself spending any more than $25 on a chicken. Maybe if I wanted to film a video in the future, maybe in like a year, I might be able to get a more expensive chicken, like maybe a $50 chicken, or maybe even a $100 chicken, and if I go really well in the future, maybe a $1,000 chicken, but you never know. Stay tuned for anything like that in the future. I'm just saying right now, though, these types of chickens are generally pretty cheap, but I don't see myself spending more than $25, and probably won't see you spending any more than $25 on a chicken, because it adds up quickly. But hey, it doesn't cost as much as a dog, unless you get that type of chicken. Well, then the dog looks like it's the price of a Buff Orpington chicken, which is one of the cheapest ones you can get, comparatively speaking. And there's a ton of stuff I covered in this video, so if you're still watching, man, that's good for you. Hey man, it's your boy Post-Editing the Chicken here to come out for you for the outro of this massive video. I have no clue how you're still watching, or maybe you just popped in, so congratulations to making it for the end if you're not watching the live chat or you're watching the replay, whatever. Thank you guys so much for the support. Hopefully this video can kill it just as well as the short's been doing, man. I got one day where I got 30K views in 48 hours, which is my most successful day on YouTube 2 days ago, bro. It's insane. So hopefully this video sits with you guys well. I'm just saying, man, these types of videos take forever to make, bro. Like, I know this might seem vague to you. You might be just thinking I'm just your average video essay maker. No, I make all these types of videos. I make a video essay every week. So I know some content creators put up more video essays than me, but just remember, I don't have all that time. I have tons of channels I work on right now. So sorry if I had to cut corners in this video, bro. Like, for real, I have tons of stuff I have to work on right now, bro. Finals are coming up at the end of the month. So this is all just gonna be, so maybe at the end of the month I might have to take a quick break. But yeah, that's why I haven't uploaded in 5 days, bro. I was finishing up this. Each of these took me hours to make, even if it didn't seem like for the ones I didn't really work too much with the effects on, I just simply worked a lot with more like audio effects on them. It's insane, bro. So be sure to click that like and subscribe, bro. This was a wild journey since I started planning this video out and writing it in December, started recording it in January, and finished it in May, bro. So yeah, I hope I reached the deadline. It is like 80 degrees right now. I'm gonna go back in, bro. AC is on.